you're good for
Okay.
this.
Okay. So that's right. So can you please brief about yourself, like what and all experience and which domain you have the expertise, with the briefing of the tools and technologies that you know.
Oh, okay. So you've basically told me to start the interview, like the mock. Is that what we're doing right now?
Yes, 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 yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Well, so I've been working as a DevOps engineer for the past 6 years, 6 to 7 years now.
Okay.
Primarily, my role is to provide platform support and infrastructure support for all the developers within our organization. And also, I'm also responsible for end-to-end deployment of all our application within our infrastructure, from testing to development, QA, and then finally into production. So as a DevOps engineer, I'm responsible for all the tools that we need from end-to-end deployment, and also making sure that these tools work synchronously. And if there are any issues that come up during the deployment, my job is to troubleshoot and fix those issues. Usually I get a ticket and then I have to work on the ticket to fix these problems. So some of these tools involve source code management like Bitbucket. Most of our Java applications are using Maven. Our study code analysis, we use tools like Sonar. And then to store all our artifacts after the pipeline has compiled the image, the jar image is stored either in our Nexus repository or our Docker repository. From there, we have the Helm chart to fetch this image and deploy within our Kubernetes cluster through the Kubernetes manifest file. If everything works successfully, I will get a message, like a Slack message saying deployment successful or an error that the deployment failed. From there, I can troubleshoot the error. If it's related strictly to platform related issue or orchestrator related issues like Jenkins, then I'll fix it. But if it's anything to do with the actual code that the developers have deployed, then I'll have to bring it to their attention, and then they will have to work with me to fix it. So that is just a general summary of my skills as a DevOps engineer, and this is what I do almost every day.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great, perfect. So let me come to the point that you have explained during the introduction. I mean, you should have a CI/CD integrated with your environment, right? So may I know what and all CI/CD tool that you know, and how do you implement those CI/CD tool in your project, specific to your projects?
Okay, so when you say CI/CD tools, you're referring to all the tools that we need to use within our CI/CD infrastructure during our software deployment, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so most of the time for development purposes, we use anything like any of those Microsoft Visual Studio Code to work on the codes and make the changes. We use Git to push the code to our repository, which is Bitbucket. And then we have Jenkins as a CI tool to do all the pipeline orchestration. So Jenkins is our main tool that we use to fetch the code and deploy. All our Java applications are being compiled with our Maven. And the other tool that we use to test the static code analysis and also to do the integration tests are all through JUnit and also through Sonar. From there, we have tools to scan the code for any vulnerabilities or any bugs before a clean image goes on our Nexus repository. This image on the Nexus repo is also version controlled so that we can know what was the last clean image that we had. So from there, we keep maybe the last 5 good images. And then from there, we can push that through Helm chart into our Kubernetes cluster. And we monitor all this also through our monitoring tool like our Grafana and Prometheus. And we also have the ELK to check all the errors that come in through the cluster into a single repository so we can monitor everything. And these are the tools.
yeah, that's great. So have you retained the Jenkins pipeline by yourself?
when I got to the company, they already had the Jenkins pipeline, but in some of the POCs that we did, I had to install
Okay,
Jenkins and write the some of the declarative pipelines to fetch the code and deploy.
okay. So if I'll ask, what are types of jobs in the, I mean, deployment types in the Jenkins available?
How many deployment types within Jenkins are available?
Yeah,
So you're talking about within Jenkins, if you go to the UI at the end of one session, you can say maybe run another code after that, or you can say like you're referring to those ones, right? Like
no,
run
no,
this
no,
after this, or
no,
you're talking
no,
about kind of deployments within the environment.
no. I specifically asking how many ways that Jenkins provide us to deploy our code. I mean, you might know what is like a pipeline, Maven, and Maven jobs, pipeline jobs. So those are the jobs by using you can deploy. Okay, okay. So if I'll specifically ask about GitLab, do you have any exposure to GitLab?
GitLab,
Yes.
I haven't used extensive experience on GitLab, no.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. So may I know what are all cloud platform that you work?
So cloud platform that I have worked with is Azure, Microsoft Azure, some GCP exposure, and also
Mhm.
AWS. The
Okay.
last job I did, everything was on Google Cloud Platform, but we weren't
Okay.
completely responsible for the platform, but we were doing provisioning of resources and basically deploying some of the applications onto these resources.
So are you using the containerization concept in your company, or
That
how you are deploying the application?
yes, everything is deployed through a container. So all the containers are within the Kubernetes cluster, and we have several nodes with all these pods running. And most of the applications are front-end based applications that are running hundreds of containers.
Mhm.
And every now and then, if a container fails, new ones are getting created.
Okay, that's fine. So how do you manage those pods? Suppose that there is some issue with your Kubernetes cluster, maybe some master node is working, not working. Okay, and some instance the memory issue is there. Okay, in that case, how do you monitor those scenarios?
So, like I said, we have tools that we use to monitor. We use some of the Grafana and the Prometheus to monitor some of these tools. And also, we have some scripts that constantly look at the logs in all the nodes and containers. And then if there's any, occasionally we just look at those logs to see if anything fails. Now we've set up some form of alerts so that if anything is down, it will show up on the dashboard to see what node is down, and therefore you can drill down and figure out which container and which issue is causing through the logs so you can monitor some of these things. If you feel like the cluster all of a sudden you're getting calls that hey, your cluster is not, things are not working, application is slow, sometimes you have to check maybe you are overutilizing the resources. In that case, we have to add additional resources through the cloud. Sometimes you have to issue things like maybe auto scaling to increase your resources, your memories, your CPUs to in that effect. And we also monitor some of these resource additions through the Kubernetes. Maybe some of the pods have quotas. We have to inspect these quotas, make sure that nothing is failing or is using more things than we need. So these are kind of the things that we use to check our resources within our cluster.
Okay, that's fine.
Can you hear me? Hello? I think I can't hear you anymore. Uh,
Yeah. So there is some network issue
Oh,
in
okay.
my home. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. So I was asking about some like container things. So what do you think, like why containerism concept came into picture?
Containerization concept came into the picture from before
Yeah.
everything was through the hardware, right? And then we realized that we had to deal with a lot of, before it was monolithic application, which one big application that was running is when it fails, everything fails. So then technology came that we needed to break them into several components. And then the issue of microservices came. And the microservices, we realized that the best way to do it is to containerize most of these applications so that within the container, you can basically install everything in the form of an image and it's easily portable from one platform to another platform. It's not very platform dependent. And it's also doesn't consume a lot of resources and you can work on it as you need it. You can spin up more resources. And if you don't need them, you can just shut them down. So the concept of containerization came from there. And then the product, which is Docker, was the product of choice for most of the work in the industry. So then the issue of containerization came to solve some of these issues. So you can break your application into the web front end, you can break it into the authorization and authentication, and then also the security and everything else could be also on another component. And then the backend can also be a database on another component. So that is the big picture of how everything came together.
Yeah, that's good. So what I understand is by like Docker Swarm and Kubernetes. What is the basic difference between Docker Swarm and
Uh,
Kubernetes?
okay, so I believe that Kubernetes was much more flexible and much more easier to deal with than your Swarm.
Mhm.
Kubernetes, you can stand up and shut them down. You can orchestrate several containers at the same time. It will function better through the networking, and the basically the container orchestration was much more superior than your Swarm.
But in all like difference, people discuss about the differences. This is the feature is in Kubernetes and this is not in the Docker Swarm. Do you have some points for this?
So Kubernetes, we had like a proper architecture where you have like basically like a client server model where you have
Mhm.
several components within the Kubernetes architecture. And I believe we don't have that in the Swarm. Maybe that's one of the restrictions between the two.
Okay, if I'll answer to this question, so the first and important thing is that we can't auto scale the container automatically in Docker Swarm, which can be possible in Kubernetes. Okay, there is the concept of HPA, horizontal pod autoscaler. Okay, by using of that concept, you can do autoscale your pod. Uh, Suppose that you have like sudden increase of load within your cluster, and your
Mhm.
application is not able to hit the load. Okay, in that case, the Docker Swarm will not like do auto scale. We have to do manual by writing some commands to scale up and scale down those containers. Okay,
Right.
and if I talk about the Kubernetes, there has the concept of HPA. You can do auto scale. You can scale out, scale in. Okay, so this is the basic difference of Docker Swarm and
Okay.
Kubernetes. Okay, let's move towards Git. So I believe Git is very basic. So do you know what is Git cherry pick?
So Git cherry pick is when you want to specifically pick up a specific change that has a unique SHA code. In that case, you have to cherry pick that from the list. So obviously you have to use the git cherry pick command, but you have to know the SHA code that goes with the specific file that you want. And usually it's used when you want to troubleshoot and get a certain uh, stage within your git log to point, or you want your pointer to point to a specific SHA. That's when you have to cherry pick that exact one from the mix.
Okay, so why Git stars is required? What is the importance of Git stars?
Git status.
Git stars.
Um, Sorry, can you repeat that again? What is the importance
Git
of
stars.
Git task?
What is the use of Git stars? The concept of Git.
Okay,
Yeah,
so Git mostly is a distributed system to allow
stars. Star.
oh
No,
S
sorry, I
can you
think you misunderstood. Stars. STAS. Stars.
stash, Git stash.
Let
Oh, okay.
me.
So let's say I'm working on one
Yeah.
item and I got a call from my manager to work on something else. I can save everything by stashing what I'm
Mm-hmm.
working on. And so Git will keep my stash or kind of save it. It will allow me to flip into another code and work on that. And then once I finish, I can go back. So stashing is just a way of you not losing everything you've started working on and then go do something else and then can come back.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. So let's move to Linux part. So I believe you do have a good grab on Linux. So how do you rate yourself in Linux?
I would say maybe on an 8 on 10. I'm not like, I wouldn't say I know everything there, but I have worked with it.
Mhm.
So I would say 7, 8 on 10 on the Linux.
Okay. What are all Linux platform that you worked on?
Red Hat, Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Ubuntu.
Mhm. Okay, that's great. So do you have exposure like Debian?
No,
Debian?
no, I haven't done that.
Okay, okay. If there is some requirement to work on Debian, so are you able to do?
Yes, I'll be able to do because I mean it's all Unix. So I think most of the things or the skills can be portable from one Unix to another. So I think I will be able to use the Debian also.
Okay. What is subscription manager in Red Hat?
So it's some kind of a, a vendor tool that is there where you can sometimes you can sign up with the vendor Red Hat if you have subscriptions and it allows you to manage your Linux environment through patches and through packages and everything. So you can always keep your OS and other things up to date because of the vendor has this subscription management, contract with you, so they can help you to bring your environment to the most up to date on everything.
Okay. So how do you know what is cockpit in Red Hat?
What is, sorry, repeat that
Cockpit,
again.
cockpit, Red Hat
Cockpit,
cockpit. Yeah.
Red Hat cockpit. I've heard about it, but I don't remember right now what it means.
Okay. That's fine. So if there is some requirement to create a custom ISO, would you be able to do that?
If there's an issue with the customer, would I be
No,
able?
no, no, no. My question, my question is that my requirement is to create a custom ISO of Red Hat.
Mm-hmm.
So are you able to do that?
Yeah,
Customize with specific packages. I need to have like hundred of packages. Those are not coming by default with the Red Hat ISO, generic ISO.
yes,
We need to import all those packages. So are you able to do those things?
yes, yeah,
And then we can ship those ISO to the customers. So are you able to do those things?
correct. So every customer is different. So first of all, you have to use the ISO tools to basically create one, depending on which the customer needs and all the security patches, the libraries, the binaries, the applications, so that the moment that you deploy the ISO image, everything is there and all the securities and the OS has already been hardened so that it's not very easy to get to it. Yes, I can do that.
Okay. Uh, can you explain how Linux kernel works?
So Linux kernel basically sits in between the OS and the hardware. So there are specific programs or binaries that has been written within the kernel
Mhm.
to talk between the user application and the OS and also the hardware. So it communicates between, it takes the information application and then also communicates down to the hardware level. So these are specialized binaries that are written to work with the operating system.
Okay, my last questions towards the Linux one. So suppose that you have a Linux VM and that is hosted on any of the data center, let's suppose the center, okay, and there you forgot your root password and the user password, right? And you don't have like SSH key enabled on those VMs. So do you know how you can retrieve those VMs?
So you're saying that there's an OS setting somewhere, you don't know what the root password is, and you don't have access to the SSH?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I forgot my root password and user password, okay, and I don't have SSH enabled. I mean, authentication type is not enabled by the SSH key. Okay, you only have the option using the root password, but you have forgotten. Is there any way that you can retrieve those VMs?
Okay, so you can boot. Are you able to log into the system at all, even to the console? If you can console drop into the
No,
system,
no.
you cannot.
Okay, okay. No, we are not able to log into the console as well.
Okay, so there's no hardware console login. There's no SSH. There's no.
Yeah.
You don't remember the root password, but the machine is up, but you cannot type anything to log in, right?
Yes, machine is up.
Machine
Yeah,
is up. It's only
yeah.
giving you the login prompt. You don't know the password, and
Mm-hmm.
you cannot get in
Yeah,
through the console.
yeah.
Now, are you able to take the system down to single user? Can you take the system down?
Yes, we can.
So if you
Yes,
can,
yes.
if you can take the,
We can bring down the system down.
yeah, if you can bring the system down and then you can boot to probably single
Mhm.
user mode and kind of mount it, then once you mount it as a read write, you should be
Mhm.
able to go into the at least the root file system, and then once you're in the root file system, you can look at the password file or the shadow file and remove that, and then once you remove that, you have to obviously restart the system, and then you can log in. Or once it's mounted, if you can create like maybe like a temporary user, you can assign a user with password, and then at least
Mhm.
reboot, and then log into the system, and then maybe you can try and change the root password from there.
Okay, that's great. So if it is the same things in the cloud, how do you manage those things? Suppose that your VM is in AWS cloud and your VM is up
So
and running. The scenario is same. So how can do that?
yeah, so you need to have some kind of an SSH key gen or some SSH ID key to get to the cloud. But if you do have console access to the VM, you can
Mhm.
also kind of do the same thing. If you do have console access and you have the permission to take the system down, you can take the system down and probably replicate the same thing that you did on the on-prem. The only difference is this is
Okay,
on-prem and this is on cloud.
okay. So do you know what is EBS volume in cloud?
ABS.
EBS, Elastic Block Storage.
Elastic block storage, I believe, is to create storage within the AWS.
Mhm.
So it allows you to assign storages to VMs and to everything. And I believe you can create the storage through the EBS, Elastic Block Storage, through the AWS console.
Okay, that's fine. Let's come to Ansible. So do you have exposure to the skill sets from Ansible?
Yeah, I have some exposure to Ansible. So my exposure to
Okay,
Ansible was to
so
use it for a few times, but not too much.
okay, okay, that's fine. So what and all like implementation that you have done by using Ansible? So,
Mm, for patch upgrades within our Red Hat Enterprise Linux environment, where we
mhm,
basically use Ansible to go through all the hundreds of hosts and run the same command across.
mhm,
We also use it
mhm,
to install other third-party applications. Again, the same
mhm.
concept. you create a file and you put all the host names in there, and we just run the playbook to deploy onto all these host names. So we
Okay.
use
What is playbook?
so
Okay,
playbook
that's fine. What
is
is playbook?
so Ansible playbook
Mhm.
is a YAML file that has a bunch of tasks that Ansible can perform. So once you put all these tasks together, you can get a playbook. So a playbook is a combination of Ansible tasks.
Okay, okay. Then what is handler?
So a handler within Ansible is a set of instructions that you can call when you're running a set of
Mhm.
specific tasks. For instance, let's say you install an application, for instance, Nginx. Nginx runs, and
Mhm.
then you put some kind of a notify, and then after the notify will call the handler to, let's say, restart, right? So once the handler is there, it will
Mhm.
only work when it's been notified to perform a task.
Okay, okay. Then what is like task then?
A task is just a set of instructions that has been given for the Ansible to run.
Okay. Is there any way that we can write multiple tasks in a single playbook?
Yes, you can. You can run multiple tasks in a single playbook. Sometimes what you can do is to put a bunch of variables in there, and then you can loop through them to perform all these tasks. So task one is let's do this, task two, do this, task three, do this on this server, and then you run it through server to server. So yes, you can run multiple tasks within the
Okay.
playbook.
How many ways you can manage variable in Ansible?
How many ways to manage variable through a variable
Ye-
file? So
Yes.
through a variable file, you can do that, and I believe also through um, dynamic variable and a static variable, you can use it to manage a variable file.
Mhm. Is there any other way?
So let me think here. Another way to manage a variable within Ansible. You can also
Okay,
call.
that's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Mhm. Okay. Mhm. Okay. So let's come to Terraform. So are you really implementing Terraform in your organization for provisioning the infrastructure?
The Terraform was running before I got there, but I have used it to
Okay.
deploy additional resources in the environment.
Okay. What are all additional resources that you have deployed?
Additional VMs on request. So ticket comes in, we need maybe 5 additional VMs. These are their host names, these are their specifications. So you take those information,
Mhm.
and you just apply them on the VM by running the Terraform commands, right? So first you
Okay.
configure the file,
Are you
and then once you configure the file, you just run the Terraform command to apply them.
are you able to write, if I'll ask you to write a Terraform file to create a resource called VPC, are you able to write it?
Yes, I can, but I will just have to, like, I don't recall it in my head, but you can always start by specifying the provider. Let's say provider is AWS, you have to specify the provider, and then you have to specify the resources, the VPC, the VPC ID, the sizes of the VPC, and what you want, the host name, the gateway info, the IP info, or the subnetting, all that stuff should be there. Once that is finished, then you just run your Terraform plan to run through the simulation to make sure that there's no errors, and then you can now apply it.
Okay. What is state locking in Terraform?
State locking in Terraform, I guess, is to prevent any changes within that state, because obviously Terraform is controlled by state file, which always has the last current working condition of the environment before any changes are applied. So I think state file is just basically preventing that state to be changed.
Okay. How do you manage like backend of Terraform?
How do you manage Terraform?
Terraform backend?
Terraform backend?
Yeah.
Uh, I don't recall that command or how to do that, but I'm sure there are backends in Terraform, but I don't remember or
Mm.
recall how to do it.
Okay. 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 That's fine. That's fine. So let's come to some services from cloud AWS. So what and all policies are there for S3?
What are all the policies for AWS?
S3 bucket,
Oh,
S3
so
bucket?
yeah, so S3 bucket obviously is for storage, right? So you can put some permissions on the bucket to allow only certain specific users to access.
Can you name those policies? Yeah, policies
Um,
that are used.
Good
How
question.
many types of S3 bucket are there? Yeah, how many types of
Uh,
S3 bucket are there?
yeah, I don't recall, honestly. I don't recall the types, the different types.
Okay,
I,
okay.
I don't recall.
So what is the use of what is the use of Lambda?
Lambda?
Yes, AWS Lambda. What is the use of AWS Lambda?
So AWS Lambda is kind of allows you to run applications without owning the infrastructure, and it also allows you to scale them and also unscale it when the
Okay,
demands are needed. So in a serverless fashion. So you're only interested in the resources to run, and basically once you need them, you increase it, and once you don't need them, you decrease them. That is basically an idea of how the Lambda works.
okay. So what is the difference between VPC and NACL?
The difference between VPC
NACL,
and network.
NACL.
Okay,
If you don't know, that's fine.
can you spell the last piece?
NACL, NACL.
Oh, and oh, okay.
Network access control list.
Okay. So, well, the knuckle is a list of, it's like an ACL list, an access list that allows certain permissions within the network and not, whilst your
Mhm.
VPC